Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 269. We're talking NFL free agency and some of the crazy trades that have happened. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from NBC Sports Boston. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I can't speak for the rest of New England right now because Tom Brady is not coming back. It's St. Patrick's Day and everyone's quarantined. So, it's kind of like the worst combination of everything that could happen for New England fans today. So the departure of Tom Brady's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way, and they're going to miss him. But, I'm doing fine with it. We'll be fine without him. We'll see what happens. But it's a wild time for sure.
It's been a wild time for agency, wild time in real life. No one knows what's going to happen. It's been crazy. I was talking to you before we started recording that a week ago, the NBA, NHL were still happening. The XFL was still in existence. So much has changed in 7 days. It's just crazy. And then we have all these moves on top of it. So I'm looking forward to talking about them with you.
Me too. It should be fun. It should be a good time. It was a really busy first legal tampering day. One of the busier ones that I've remembered in recent years.
Yeah, weird to believe that the NFL free agency hasn't actually started yet, but yeah, we'll talk about everything. So before we begin, I should say that if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe or hit the like button, especially subscribing. That helps a lot more than anyone realizes, as I've realized recently. Also, if you want to spread the word about the website or the YouTube channel, that would be a great help. So if you're looking to help us out, then that would be the best way. All right, let's begin with the big news. So the Raiders signed Jeff Heath. No, I'm just kidding. Let's get to the quarterbacks. Tom Brady has announced this morning actually that he will not be back in New England, as you just mentioned. So that's your account. You live up there. Do you want to delve more into that, and also what is going to happen with the Patriots quarterback situation from here on?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank Tom Brady for announcing this at 9 a.m. as opposed to last night when I was working alone, because if this had come out at 10 p.m., my brain might have exploded. So thank you for holding off on that, Tom. But yeah, I mean, the Patriots haven't had a question about their quarterback situation long-term since before Brady was a starter. I mean, the year that Matt Castle started, there were questions when he was hurt. And then when he had the 4-game suspension, it was can Jimmy G and Jacoby Brissett keep them afloat? Yeah, I mean, those were some minor questions, but now it's who's next for the Patriots? Brady has been there for 20 years. I don't actually remember a quarterback not named Tom Brady being the presumptive starter for the Patriots. I am too young for that. I was 4 when Drew Bledsoe started, and I don't remember that enough. So it's going to be crazy in New England. Right now, it seems like they are willing to give Jarrett Stidham a chance, which is horrifying. I was not big on Jarrett Stidham in last year's draft class. I thought his pocket presence wasn't particularly good, and that showed out at the Senior Bowl and during his time at Auburn. He has some arm talent, so maybe if he works out those kinks, he'll be better. And he looked good in the preseason, so it seems like Belichick might trust him. There really aren't many veterans on the quarterback market that they could target right now. I mean, Jameis Winston would be a direction that I would consider going in. Just thinking along the lines of, veteran to compete with Stidham. And if Winston's vision is better and if he can avoid interceptions, he would make a sensible fit there. And he may come at a discount because there just aren't many starting quarterback jobs out there. So Winston could make sense from that standpoint. For the Buccaneers, I think you and I both kind of discounted the Bucs because we thought they'd go after Phillip Rivers. Brady landing there is a fantastic fit. He gets Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, OJ Howard, Cameron Brate, 4 legit weapons right off the bat, a solid offensive line that needs a right tackle because DeMar Dotson's a free agent. But they also have a nice young slot guy in Scotty Miller who had some good moments as a rookie. And I get this slight feeling that, believe it or not, Brady could come in a package deal with Antonio Brown. Because they seem to have a good relationship. I don't know if the Bucs would actually sign him, but if that's a stipulation to get Brady, they may give him a shot. And adding him to that receiving core would be pretty unbelievable. So I think the Bucs are pretty set on offense outside of right tackle and running back if they do end up signing Brady, as are the indications. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do there with Bruce Arians. It all depends on if they can build up the defense.
Imagine a receiving core with Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. That's insane. And then you have the tight ends, as you mentioned. That'd be pretty crazy. I like the Buccaneers a lot if Brady does in fact sign with them, as it sounds like he's going to. I also like their defense too. Jason Pierre-Paul came back late in the year last year. He played very well, and he resigned earlier. The secondary got better with Jamel Dean. I thought he improved. He looked terrible against Seattle, but it seemed like every game after that he just improved. Running back, they can get that in the first round or second round, and then right tackle, they can either re-sign Dawson or get one of the many talented tackles in this class. So it seems like the Buccaneers are in great shape if they do sign Brady. So I like that fit a lot. To go back to the Patriots. So, well, first of all, we have this comment from TJ. Julian Edelman used to play quarterback, of course, at Kent State. I don't see him playing quarterback for the Patriots. First of all, he's not a good quarterback, and second, like, you would take a receiver away. He's the best receiver they have. You would take the receiver away. Like, maybe he plays a wildcat like twice per game or something like that. But other than that, I don't see him playing quarterback. So you mentioned Stidham. He had his ups and downs in the preseason. He had more downs than ups following like kind of a promising start. And you mentioned Winston. I like Winston. I would sign him. I've heard Andy Dalton rumors though, and I wonder if Bill Belichick will be willing to trade for Dalton, kind of like for a late round pick, and then to draft a quarterback. Maybe we discussed Jake Fromm in the third round. They suddenly have like $1 billion third round picks because of the compensatory picks. So maybe they even trade up to the bottom of the second to get Fromm if they want, or they can get Jordan Love at the 23 maybe. What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you see them going like a stopgap guy and then a rookie, or do you think they go with like Winston?
I think that they're probably more likely to go with stopgap and a rookie. I kind of think the Andy Dalton rumors definitely have some legs to them. I could see that working out simply because Dalton's not going to have a chance to go to a lot of places that could use him as a starter. New England, he could at least compete with the for a starting job with Stidham. And I wouldn't be surprised if they traded for Dalton, had Stidham, and drafted a guy like Jake Fromm, and we're just like, you three guys are going to battle it out. You're all going to make the roster in all likelihood, unless Dalton is the loser there. And then they would trade him to be a backup somewhere else. But then they'd roll with three quarterbacks and just kind of try to figure out who's going to be our next guy. So I could see this being not a rebuilding year for the Patriots because they still have a solid roster. They have a good offensive line now that they've tagged Joe Thuney. Their defense still looks solid, even though they've lost some linebackers. So Belichick's going to try to find a way to win. He just might need a quarterback that can manage games, which I would like Jake Fromm for. Some people will look at Andy Dalton and say that he can get a good enough team to the playoffs, but how far can he get them? And Stidham's a wild card. I really don't know what to expect from him. My dad wants Sanu for quarterback of the Patriots now. I think Sanu might have a better career passer rating than Eli Manning. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that might be the case. I will double check on that for sure, though. Just got to get my digs in at Eli a little bit.
Let's put N'Keal Harry at receiver or quarterback while we're at it. It could have like not just a 3-man competition. You got like a 6-man competition to see what happens. But no, seriously though, I do think I think what you said about Dalton with Stidham plus rookie is I think that's the way the Patriots go. So yeah, I mean, we have other news outside of Tom Brady, and I imagine that some people might be sick about hearing about Tom Brady already. And we had a comment from Hot Dog City saying, "Well, the Giants signed a legit pass rusher. What about Clowney?" I heard that the Giants are high on Clowney. He's the best free agent available right now outside of Brady. So yeah, I mean, if they don't get Clowney, then Fowler makes sense. I think the Giants have done a good job so far in free agency. So very quickly before we move on to the other quarterbacks, what do you think about the Giants?
Yeah, if they got Clowney, that would be a massive upgrade for their defense. They've made some nice moves. I like the signing of James Bradbury. The Blake Martinez signing was also a solid one. Blake Martinez is kind of one of those dudes who's an enigma to me. Like, I can't figure him out. Some days I'm like, oh, he's a great tackler and bad in coverage. And then some days it's the opposite. So I like some days I think he's great in coverage and a bad tackler, but generally speaking, I think he's a good young linebacker. So if they had another guy at the front level pass rushing, I think that the Giants defense will have upgraded at 3 levels and really be well positioned to make a run in the NFC East. And I did bet on them to win the Super Bowl. We talked about that a couple podcasts ago with our Super Bowl odds. I also bet on the Buccaneers before they were tied to Tom Brady. So that was good news too.
It's good. It's good foresight. I mean, we thought Rivers was going to go there, and I thought Rivers going there would be a nice bet. And now Brady, and yeah, we had this comment from Duncan 68. Yeah, I think the Buccaneers are a Super Bowl threat with Brady because as we discussed, they have great weapons, they have a very good offensive line, and they have an improving defense plus a good coach. If they can add the running back and a right tackle, suddenly they're looking like one of the best teams in the NFL. So I definitely think that they're a Super Bowl contender with Brady. All right, and then we're going to get to some of this stuff, the Buckner trade as well as the bizarre Hopkins trade. But let's finish off the quarterbacks. So Philip Rivers went to Indianapolis. As we discussed, we thought he'd go to Tampa, but Indianapolis was always an option, I thought, for me because of Frank Reich, because of the offensive line. What do you think about the fit with Rivers in Indy?
I think it's a great fit. He's on a 1-year, $25 million deal. That seems like perfect for both sides. So if things don't work out, Rivers will either have a chance to go somewhere else or retire after the season. But if things do work out, he's going to stick around in Indianapolis. They have a great supporting cast for him on offense. He's going to be better protected than he has been in his entire NFL career. And the Colts need to add some receiving talent aside from T.Y. Hilton for Rivers. But they have a good tight end in Jack Doyle, and this is a deep receiver class. So if they use some of their earlier picks on some receiving weapons for Rivers, he should be just fine. And, if you look at their backfield too, Marlon Mack can be kind of the, every down type role. And then Hines can work as a receiving back for them too. So they've got a couple of weapons out of the backfield for him. So I really like the fit, but I think the contract is even better. Just that really short-term guarantee for Indianapolis, the guarantee for Rivers that he gets $5 million. Both sides seem happy with it. You reunite Rivers with Reich, like you mentioned. So I think this is just an all-around really great move. And I also think it reflects something that we have seen with most of the quarterback contracts. The quarterbacks are taking discounts, and they're not getting these massive, 3-year, $100 million deals that some people were talking about because they're realizing, hey, if I want to build a team around me and win, I've got to take a little bit of a discount unless my team has massive cap space. So I think Rivers doing that is really smart for his chances of making a playoff run.
Yeah, none of the quarterbacks are getting a lot of money except for Ryan Tannehill and Kirk Cousins, which is just weird. I love this fit. I think first of all, there's no risk. It's only 1 year. And yeah, when you sign a 1-year deal, the only risk you take on is you can't roll over the money into next year. But the Colts have so much cap space that it doesn't matter. Second, we mentioned Frank Reich. Reich coached Rivers when the two were in San Diego, and Rivers has some of his best years on the Reich. So Rivers can just go into this new team with no adjustment period. I think that's huge. Playing behind a great offensive line for the first time, maybe ever, is just has to be so appealing to him. He had no help last year from his blocking. They were missing 3 starters most of the time, sometimes 2. But now suddenly he's going to have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They just need to add another receiver, really. I mean, they've T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell, I think is going to have a good second season. They just need another receiver to go along with them. But yeah, they have Jack Doyle too. And then the running backs, as you mentioned, plus their defense is going to be a lot better. And we'll discuss this trade in a little bit, the DeForest Buckner trade. I think this team is a Super Bowl contender for sure. Even if Rivers is not 100% of what he used to be, and I don't think he is, even if he's 80%, I still think they can make a deep run. We saw Peyton Manning play he was so decrepit in 2015, and yet the Broncos won the Super Bowl. Granted, they had a legendary defense, but the Colts have a great roster overall. So I like them a lot. So the other major move, and this will prompt another move. So Teddy Bridgewater went to the Panthers, 3 years, $60 million, and that means Cam Newton will move on elsewhere. So we'll get to Newton in a second. What do you think about the Bridgewater signing?
So I like Teddy Bridgewater as a player, and I'm happy to see him get a chance to start because I think he deserves it. He's a solid quarterback. He's nothing great. But he's also really good against the spread, so I like having him start for a team for our purposes in the Picks podcast when this rolls back into being that. But they've overpaid for him. They're giving him $21 million a year for 3 years, and it just kind of seems like a weird move. Like, I don't know. I don't view the Panthers as having, a great supporting cast around him. Like, they have a couple of good receiving weapons. DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel both looked good last year, but when Bridgewater was with the Saints and playing well, he had a really good offensive line in front of him. I don't think that the Panthers have that. They traded Trey Turner for Russell Okung, and Okung, while he's talented when healthy, is rarely healthy. So that was a severely questionable move. And outside of him, they don't have much. Greg Van Roten's a free agent, so they're missing really 2 guards. I can't remember who their center is at the moment, but I think they have a good right, but my memory is escaping me on these people. But Bridgewater needs a lot of help around him for him to be, anything more than probably average. So I feel like if he's under pressure a lot, that could cause some problems for him. And let's not pretend like he doesn't have some injury concerns too. I mean, he missed, I think, the better part of 2 years with a horrible knee injury suffered at practice. So that's a concern for me with Bridgewater, just the fit there. It just doesn't feel like the Panthers are the team to me that Bridgewater is going to find a ton of success on, really lead them to a winning record. I still think the Panthers are a rather weak team right now. They have some positives. I've identified them as a favorite for the number 1 pick at times. They're probably trending a little bit away from that, but I think there are some issues with Bridgewater. But I don't hate the deal, but I just don't love it.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars have overtaken the Panthers to be the number 1 pick. They've traded everyone away. I love the Leonard Fournette meme or GIF, whatever he posted was like, he is just his face on Will Smith's body in the final episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air when he's in the empty mansion. I thought that was hilarious. And it kind of like it was perfect because the Jaguars don't have anything anymore. And the Panthers, I think there's a better chance that Teddy Bridgewater stays healthy than Cam Newton, but I don't think it's that much more significant. Like the one of the main concerns that teams had with Bridgewater entering the draft that he entered was that he wasn't healthy. Like he just wasn't durable, and he like that it turned out to be true. Like he hasn't been able to hold up. He had that horrible knee injury. Like granted, he's recovered from that, but he could just get hurt again. He's pretty fragile. So I'm pretty concerned with this. And to get rid of Cam Newton because he's not durable and to get another guy who's not durable, it just doesn't really make much sense to me. I like Bridgewater. Like you said, the spread covering is definitely huge. It's nice. But if you give me a completely healthy Newton and a completely healthy Bridgewater, I'm taking Newton. So I think this is potentially a step backward for the Panthers. But you know what? Bridgewater is still young. He's younger than Newton. So maybe the Panthers are thinking like, hey, this is our long-term guy. We're still going to suck next year. We're going to get a nice pick and we're going to get some help for him. So I could see it from that perspective. So I don't hate this move, but I just think it's a little weird. So I'm not like a huge fan.
Yeah, and I think the Newton thing is, you bring up a good point. Like, if they're both fully healthy, Newton's the better player. I would agree with that. And, now they got to find a place for Newton, and it might be hard to do that because, one of the weird things about the world we're currently living in is people can't really travel and go places. And Newton would probably need to pass a physical in order to, be cleared to play for another team. And he could eventually do that. Don't get me wrong on this. Like, he could take a private plane somewhere and, take the physical and pass, but it's going to be a lot harder for him to do that. And just, he meant so much to the Charlotte community too. And he didn't seem to really want to be traded by the Panthers. Like they said, like, oh, they're giving him permission to pursue a trade. And he was like, no, they're forcing me to pursue a trade. So it doesn't seem like they're handling this exit the wrong way. So just, it's pointing out some more red flags with the Panthers' new coaching staff and ownership that I've been seeing since they've been hired. So I'm just kind of low on it. I also like this comparison from Josh Griffin here, the YouTube comment, like another Nick Foles deal. I think Bridgewater has a little bit more upside than Nick Foles just because he can manage games a little bit better, but there is a low ceiling on it and they're paying him a lot. So I could see this, kind of being a burden if Bridgewater doesn't pan out.
I don't know if if that was figurative or literal, the Nick Foles deal. Like I just, when he said that, I searched Nick Foles on Twitter, and people are saying he's going to go to New England via trade. So I mean, I don't know how legit that is. I don't know if this is like the fake Schefter account or anything. What are your thoughts on that?
Nick Foles to New England would be something, given that he beat the Patriots in Super Bowl. I never remember the number. I think it was 52. But I don't think that would work out very well. Foles has pretty much demonstrated that if he's not with the Eagles, or if he's not with that Eagles coaching staff and Frank Reich, he's not very good. Maybe McDaniels could work with him, but I would much rather take a flyer on Jameis Winston than trade anything for Nick Foles, unless we're getting like a salary dump deal out of it.
Maybe. I mean, I feel like the Jaguars would have to give something up to trade Foles. He has such a bad contract, so I don't know. It would. I can't imagine the Patriots making a bad move here regarding Foles. Like if they're getting something to take on his contract, and then they have him as a stopgap for one of the quarterbacks you mentioned. I actually kind of like that. So we'll have to see. I don't even know if that's real or anything. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Hot Dog City asks, it's weird. Yeah, we haven't heard anything on Clowney or Fowler. I imagine we will. I mean, technically free agency hasn't even started yet. So I there's nothing wrong with those guys. So I think we'll definitely see that in the near future, right?
Yeah, I think we'll hear about them sooner rather than later. I think it was just kind of a lukewarm defensive edge market to start things off because, Shaq Barrett was one of the top guys and he got franchise tagged. So that kind of took the steam off of it. And then a lot of linebackers flew off the board, a lot of pass catchers. So I think the next group is going to be that defensive line edge rusher group because we saw DJ Reader come off the board on the defensive line today. So now I think like Fowler and Clowney are going to get a lot more attention moving forward.
Yeah, we'll see that soon. Bagley says Foles versus Wentz in the next Super Bowl. That would be something else. That'd be interesting. And then Josh says Foles in the first to New England for a bologna sandwich. I think that is definitely a fair trade. Speaking of trades, let's get to some of the trades that we had. So we had I feel like the first one that broke when the start of like the tampering period began was just kind of shocked everyone. Really, it was one of the most lopsided trades we've seen in a very long time. So the Cardinals acquired DeAndre Hopkins from the Texans for David Johnson, a second-round pick. Now there was swapping of other picks as well, but that's kind of the meat of the trade. So I feel like people have heard my opinion on this. I've said Bill Bryan is the dumbest person in the NFL, and I stand by that, and other people think that as well. Actually, I don't know if any of you saw this. I tweeted out. I contacted someone in a league office that I speak to, and I said Bill Bryan solidifying himself as the dumbest person in the NFL, and then he responded Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber. So I'm not alone in thinking that. So what are your thoughts on this trade?
I couldn't fathom this. Like when I saw the Texans traded for David Johnson, because that's how this trade was first broken. It was like, oh, the Texans have got David Johnson. I was like, all right, this makes some sense. Like, they need a running back. David Johnson's had some bad years. Maybe they're getting him on the cheap. Maybe they're just going to give him a shot to try to win the starting job. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. They don't have to pay Deshaun Watson yet. By the time they have to, they can get out of the Johnson contract. I was like, all right, okay, that's fine. And then it's revealed that DeAndre Hopkins is in the deal. And it's like, okay, what is happening? This seems like a terrible idea. Not only are you trading one of the best receivers in the NFL, you're trading him for a running back who has declined immensely since being one of the better running backs in the league due to injury. He was overtaken by Kenyon Drake last year, and nothing against Kenyon Drake, but Kenyon Drake was nothing with the Dolphins before he went to the Cardinals. And that may have been more related to Adam Gase than anything else, but that's not exactly a great sign. And now Johnson's like on this massive deal, and you're going to put him in the offense instead of DeAndre Hopkins. That just makes no sense to me. Watson loved throwing to Hopkins, and now he doesn't have that. All he has is Will Fuller, who is, pretty constantly hurt. Randall Cobb, who the team signed to like a $9 million a year deal, who is also banged up a fair amount and also doesn't deserve that amount of money. And then I think they still have Kenny Stills, and Kenny Stills is a fine guy. He fit in very well as a third receiver, but now he's going to have to ask Kenny Stills to be more. It just doesn't make any sense. It feels like it was a cry for help from Bill O'Brien. Like he was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need someone to bail me out. I got to make a terrible move or a bunch of terrible moves. And just, maybe someone will come in and be like, all right, Bill, you can't be GM anymore. You can't do this. Because that's the only way any of this makes sense to me. Unless he's literally that bad at being a general manager, which he might be. The only other thing I can think of is that this is a cry for help. And I'm like, when this happened, I walked into my kitchen and went up to my dad and I was like, Dad, we have to get to Houston right now. Like, Bill O'Brien is not okay. So this is one of the most ridiculous trades I've ever seen. And I'm anticipating this to backfire horribly for Houston.
Yeah, I like the cry for help. I mean, I could see like his family members and friends, although he may not have any friends, but like I could see them coming together and saying like, Bill, you really need help. Let's get you into a facility so you can recover. It's so terrible. And then I think it was Aaron Wilson from the Houston Chronicle who tweeted out the story about why he traded Hopkins, and it was because he didn't get along with Hopkins. And I replied him like, he doesn't get along with anyone. He fired his entire front office because he didn't like them. Like he's just a bad guy. He doesn't get along with anyone. We've heard stories that he didn't get along with Clowney either. So he apparently doesn't get along with his best players. He doesn't get along with his front office. They had one of the best scouting departments in the NFL. They would always find these gems in the third day and undrafted free agency, and now they don't anymore because they don't have any real scouts left. It's just a mess. It's horrible. And at some point you have to wonder, like, hey, maybe he doesn't get along with all these people just because he's a miserable person and he shouldn't be in this high position role. Like I just think it's so bad to have him on. I think it's just terrible. And the Texans, if they weren't carried by Deshaun Watson, they would be one of the worst teams in the NFL right now. It's crazy. Like they had four pillars of their franchise. They had Watson, Hopkins, Watt, and Clowney. And they traded two of those guys for a second-round pick, a third-round pick, and an old running back who can't run anymore. Like that's what they got for two of the four pillars of the franchise. It's unbelievable how bad he is, and I don't understand why he still has a job.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. And you go back to the Laramie Tunsil trade too. Like Tunsil turned into a good player for them, but he gave up so much in that deal. And if you look at like the Stephon Diggs deal compared to the DeAndre Hopkins deal, you look at what the Vikings got for Diggs and what the Cardinals got for Hopkins, and you're like, wow, that discrepancy is unbelievable. And Hopkins is a better player than Diggs. That's not a knock on Diggs. Diggs is still an unbelievable receiver, a really good player, but Hopkins is probably the best receiver in the NFL. And it's just ridiculous how little the Cardinals got him for. And now the Cardinals receiving core, they have Larry Fitzgerald, who's a future Hall of Famer, DeAndre Hopkins, who may well be a future Hall of Famer, Christian Kirk, who looked really good last year at times when he was healthy. And then they had a bunch of guys they selected last year. The two I remember off the top of my head. No, I remember three. Keyshawn Johnson, Hakeem Butler, and Andy Isabella from UMass, who I really like, is a speed weapon. So they've got a lot of upside there. And, their offense should be better than it was last year. And they really didn't give up much to get Hopkins at all.
Yeah, second round pick. It's not inconsequential, but it's not a big deal when you're getting someone like that. And then David Johnson's not really a factor. So yeah, I mean they typically run four receivers in formation. So they have three very good ones right now, like one great one and two very good ones. And then they as you said, they have some young guys to have the fourth role. So I guess they can mix and match based on the matchup. So yeah, the Cardinals looking pretty good if they can address the offensive line. And maybe add a couple of good defensive players. As we said, there are some good defensive players still out there. I like that a lot. So I think that I think the Cardinals are in good shape. The Texans, meanwhile, not very good. So this question: would you rather have O'Brien as your head coach or Snyder as your owner? I'd rather have Snyder. I mean, he tends to like the people around him. I don't know. Like O'Brien just gets rid of everyone, whereas Snyder you wish he wouldn't meddle a lot, and he does, but O'Brien has just destroyed this franchise.
Yeah, I think this is a good question, because if it was just O'Brien as a head coach, I might be able to live with that. As opposed to Snyder, where Snyder hasn't had a lot of his success and he's relied a little bit too long on certain people. But I think I probably would go with Snyder, because I think one of Snyder's problem is he's loyal to a fault at times. He also has like this weird thing where he likes to know that he has the power, and he makes people call him Mr. Snyder, and it's kind of off-putting, but I don't think he's a bad guy. But Bill O'Brien just has like these moments of just vast aggression. He doesn't get along with anyone, and then he makes dumb moves. So probably would have to give the edge to Snyder, but that is a really good question.
Yeah, no, good question here. It's very topical. So, wow, the Texans just traded Deshaun Watson for Rex Burkhead. No, okay, that didn't happen, but yeah, I imagine that some of you may have believed that it happened, and it's a sad state of affairs that it could happen. So we kind of skipped on this. I forgot to ask you about this. So Dalen Fields asks if Cam Newton goes to the Chargers, where do you see Herbert and Love landing? But in relation to that, we didn't discuss where we think Cam Newton will go. So what do you think about those two things?
Yeah, I think Newton would make sense for the Bears as competition to Mitch Trubisky. Dalton and Newton would probably be their top two trade targets at this point. I actually like the Chargers as a landing spot. If they can get Newton for cheap, just a mid-round draft pick, if that's what they do, they could still draft a guy like Herbert, give Newton a year at the reins, see how Herbert develops. And, if Newton gets back to his MVP type form, the Chargers will be a lot better than people anticipate. And Herbert can sit for another year if he has to, if they franchise Newton, or they can tag and trade Newton. So I would like him as a fit for the Chargers. I think that's a smart one. And I don't think it would preclude them from taking a guy like Herbert. But I could see them passing on Herbert if they wanted an elite left tackle in the first round. But yeah, I think the Chargers and Bears would be where I would think Newton would end up. I don't think he ends up on the Patriots. I think that if the Patriots make a trade, they'd probably would rather get Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I listed the Patriots as an option for Newton earlier in the day, but then I thought about it, and I'm like, I just don't see him as some guy that Bill Belichick would want. So I like your Chargers suggestion. I think that makes a lot of sense. They're moving into a new stadium, so they need to create a buzz, and I think getting Newton creates way more of a buzz than Justin Herbert or Tua Tagovailoa. I think creates more of a buzz too, but he can't play it right away. So that's going to be the issue there. As for these other quarterbacks, let's not assume that the Dolphins take Tua Tagovailoa. I think they might take Herbert. So if Tua and Love fall, I think Tua would maybe go to the Jaguars. If they do trade Nick Foles, I think that's a landing spot for him. Jordan Love, I could see him going in the second round somewhere, or maybe if a team trades up late in the first. A team like the Bears, if they get a veteran, as they're sounding like they're going to get a veteran, if they get someone to replace Mitchell Trubisky and they get rid of Trubisky somehow, they would need a young quarterback to step in. So I think that makes sense. Also, Tampa, if they sign Tom Brady, they obviously need a quarterback for the future. So I could see Tampa using their second round pick on Jordan Love to groom behind Brady. So I think those make sense.
I got one more thought on quarterbacks while it's in my mind.
Sure.
One weird thing I would look out for the Patriots, they could possibly be a team that would be interested in trading up for Tua, because the Patriots have a good relationship, or Bill Belichick does, with Nick Saban. And, Tua's viewed as a genuinely great guy. And obviously when he was on the field, he was fantastic. And if he had stayed healthy, it would be a debate of Burrow or Tua for the top pick. So I think if he starts to slide, the Patriots might think, is there a way that we can trade for this guy? Or even if he's not going to slide, Matt Patricia has the third pick. If the Patriots can convince him to, take on some of the talent the Patriots have, say they give up I don't know exactly what the Lions need off the top of my head, but if they give up Joe Thuney and some draft picks for Patricia, who's kind of in win now mode, maybe he'd consider doing it. I don't know for a fact if that would happen, but just an interesting possibility to toss around.
Yeah, it's a good thought, and with all these extra picks now from the compensatory picks, and you could trade them now. They suddenly have ammunition to move up, even though they don't have a second rounder. So, yeah, I mean that makes sense. I think they'd have to give up the 2021 first rounder to move up from 23 to 3. I mean, it's going to take a lot, but yeah, that makes sense for both teams. I think. Yeah, the Lions need to win now. If they get Tooney and a bunch of picks. I think that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's a great thought for sure. So let's get to the other receiver trade. So it was the Stephon Diggs trade, which made a lot more sense, I think. So the Bills got Stephon Diggs from the Vikings for the 22nd overall pick, a 5th rounder, a 6th rounder, and a 2021 4th rounder. So what are your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty mutually beneficial deal. I think that the Vikings come out a tiny bit on top just because they were able to get so many picks for Diggs, and they'll be able to turn that into a lot of talent. And this is a receiver heavy draft, so if they want to replace him with one of their 2 first-round picks, they'll have the opportunity to do that. But Buffalo by no means is getting ripped off here. They're giving up, a first-round pick and a bunch of mid-round picks for probably one of the top 10, if not top 15 receivers in the NFL. And Diggs slots right into their receiving core, gives them a true number 1 option. John Brown becomes that number 2 speed threat guy. Diggs will get a ton of targets and receptions. And then Beasley will work the middle of the field, be in the slot. And if Dawson Knox grows, that's 4 great weapons for Josh Allen to have on the backfield. Diggs is also coming off of a season where he averaged 17.9 yards per catch and was a pretty good deep threat. Josh Allen wasn't great going deep last year, surprisingly enough, despite having John Brown. I think with Brown getting coverage from number 2 corners, that'll open him up more. And Diggs is also a deep threat and can catch these bombs that Allen should be capable of throwing. So I love his fit in Buffalo. I think they gave up a little bit of a premium to get him, but again, nothing egregious. So I think you graded this as an A- for both teams. I'd probably give the Vikings an A just because they had drama with Diggs. So I don't think they were getting him for anything more than this. And then the Bills, I probably would give a B+ bordering on A-, like an 89 type grade if this was school, which it's not. But yeah, so I think both teams did really well here. I think this is really a mutually beneficial deal.
Here's a question. Has Stephon Diggs ever played with a good quarterback?
That is a really fair question. Case Keenum truthers, do not at me, but I will say no.
Yeah, I don't like Kirk Cousins. Case Keenum is a great backup guy, spot starter, but he's not a good quarterback, and Kirk Cousins certainly is not. And you could argue that Josh Allen isn't yet either, but he has great potential, and I think that. When he was drafted, I said that this is going to be like a 3-year project. Like in his 3rd year, if he was coached well and surrounded by good talent, I thought that he would take the next step. And he played well last year at times. He had a couple bad games, like the Baltimore game. He didn't play that well, but he did show some flashes. And now that he has Diggs on top of what he had last year, I think that's huge. And I think what Joshua Griffin says here, it's a power play by the Bills. I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, some of the stuff they've done so far, that they've added some other weapons like Mario Addison, couple linebackers as well. The Bills have made some very good moves, and I think that they're kind of smelling the blood in the water with the Patriots. Tom Brady's not going to be there anymore, and you can't ever discount a Bill Belichick coach team. I mean, he took Matt Castle to an 11-5 record, but I think the Bills legitimately think that they could win the division now, and I think they're correct. I think if right now, depending unless the Patriots get a good quarterback somehow, I think you would have to handicap the Bills as the favorite. And I think it's I love the move from the Bills. I understand that some people are thinking that, they gave up too much and Diggs is a drama queen. But I just love the upside of this trade. It just says the Bills are like, okay, we're in control of this division now. We're going to win it. We're going to go deep into the playoffs. And I think they can. And then from the Vikings perspective, it's tough. It's like, I want to grade this trade well, and I did. But it also coincides with what they gave Kirk Cousins. Like they had a chance to get out of that deal after this year, but they decided to extend it for 2 more years. And once they did that, the second they did it, Stephon Diggs is like, yeah, I'm out of here, which is just so telling about how overrated Cousins is. So I thought the Vikings did a good job in this trade, but it really stemmed from a bad move that they did earlier. So overall, I don't like what the Vikings have done, but I can at least like this trade.
Yeah, I think you make a great point. Like, this didn't have to happen. If they don't extend Kirk Cousins, like, Diggs might gripe and groan about having to play with him for another year. But if they moved on from him, Diggs might stick around there, and he's on a really reasonable deal. So I like that. And what you said about the Bills too, I think that's a really great point. Is that this is kind of a statement by the front office and coaching staff saying, like, hey, we have the talent to win this division. We made the playoffs last year, and really they should have beat the Texans in the first round. Allen couldn't really get them there, but that's a great learning experience for them. I think that they're like really on the upswing now. And as good as Belichick is as a coach, like, depending on who he has at quarterback, if he does roll with Stidham, that may not work out. Like, Stidham could be an interception machine. We just don't know. And even great coaches can't overcome like terrible quarterback play. So, the Patriots might still be able to post a winning record with Stidham at quarterback, but the Bills could hypothetically, if they keep upgrading their team, win, 11, 12 games if Josh Allen really improves. And I think he's got a good shot at that.
Yeah, I like the Bills' defense against Stidham. I think that just seems like a good matchup to me. So we'll see what the Patriots do. I mean, the offseason has just begun, really. So I'm curious to see what happens. Someone asked about Jameis Winston earlier, like where we think he's going to go, and you said that that you would go with Winston, and I agree. I don't think did we talk about Winston's other possible locations as well?
I don't think we did. I would say again, there's so few places that he can be a starter. It's kind of hard to find a fit. Like, he could go to the Bears maybe for the right price. Chargers could use him as a potential stopgap. But then other than that, it's kind of like, would the Steelers take him and be like, hey, we'll make you the highest paid backup quarterback in the league or something? Like, I don't know if that would happen, but I think it's kind of down to Patriots, Chargers, or Bears, unless he wants to be a backup.
Yeah, Chargers and Bears were the two teams I was going to mention. A lot of the spots are taken already, so it is weird. Maybe he just waits for an injury, or he could do that, which might be a good idea. But then again, he wouldn't learn a system, and he would come in late, so that would be a problem. So it is pretty tough. I imagine that the Bears should be interested in him because he's better than Trubisky, and the Chargers could use him if they draft Tua, because Tua obviously can't play right away. So that makes sense to me. So yeah, those two spots are pretty logical. All right, let's get to the other trades. So the other major trade. So it's the DeForest Buckner to the Colts, which is kind of surprising. And the 49ers got the number 13 overall pick in return. So what are your thoughts on that trade?
My immediate thought about this trade was, I'm so glad I don't have to mock a player to the Colts at 13, because that was one of the trouble spots in every mock I would do. I'd be like, I don't really know what the Colts want here. I can't really figure it out. So that was good. But I think this is a pretty balanced trade for each side. It's similar to the Vikings-Bills deal. The Colts needed a surefire upgrade on that defensive line from the interior. They got that with Buckner. They gave him a big money extension, made him the second highest paid interior lineman in the NFL behind Aaron Donald, and he should be a disruptive playmaker for that defense for years to come. I think he's only turning 26 this offseason, if not 25. So he's got a lot of great years in front of him. And, I kind of had thought they might draft a Derek Brown type if he fell to them, or Javon Kinlaw in that first round. So basically they're getting a sure version of those guys. Like, Buckner definitely works at the NFL level. So they're sacrificing that potential upside and cost effectiveness for the fact that they know Buckner will work out for them. For the 49ers, obviously they couldn't pay everyone they had on the defensive front from a talent standpoint. And they chose to pay Armstead, I believe, about $17 million a year. So they're getting like a $4 million a year discount and picking up a top 15 pick. So I think that for them, Buckner's the superior player, but part of building a team is managing cost and finding ways to get talent that you can keep on cheap rookie deals. So they'll have whoever they take at 13 for 5 years, including that 5th year option at a reasonable cost. And they could get a Derek Brown type or a Javon Kinlaw type and they wouldn't have to worry about that person panning out right away because they have so much other talent on the defensive line around them, or they could take another position too. So I think this is a really great team deal for both sides. It just made a lot of sense. I didn't see it coming, but once the details were out there, I was like, yeah, I can really get behind this.
I thought it was pretty clever by John Lynch because heading into this offseason, I didn't think they'd be able to keep Eric Armstead, who just had a great year. He's going to command a lot of money, and he did. He got a big contract from the 49ers. When that happened, I'm like, how are they going to pay these other guys? Because they have Nick Bosa, they have Dee Ford, and they also have obviously DeForest Buckner on the defensive line. So I thought like they're going to have to let go of Buckner, but maybe he can still play next year, but it was still going to be a lot of money. And then they ended up trading Buckner. So it was pretty clever because if they just let Eric Armstead go, they would get a third-round compensatory pick in the 2021 draft. But they decided, all right, we'll re-sign Armstead and we'll trade Buckner and we'll get a first-round pick for him. So they basically went from a third-round compensatory pick to the number 13 overall. Now, personally, I would rather have Buckner than Armstead. He just has a longer track record of better play, and I think Buckner is just a better player overall. So, it's kind of like they did suffer somewhat of a downgrade here, but they can draft Javon Kinlaw or maybe even Derek Brown. In our mock draft, Derek Brown dropped to 13, right? So maybe that happens, or they could take a receiver. So, yeah, there are a lot of opportunities here for the 49ers. I thought it was a brilliant move by John Lynch. He's really showing that he's a great GM. And for the Colts, it makes a lot of sense. Like you said, Buckner is still young. Like, it's not like they traded for a 29-year-old. He's 25, 26. He's going to be great for a long time. And, at 13, we've had them drafting a defensive tackle. And so why not take the proven guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the Colts are also in win now mode. So getting a guy who they know can contribute right away is pretty big because they have, obviously with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, it's a 1-year window because he's on a 1-year deal. And the Niners are in win now mode too, but they have enough talent they can buy in the defensive line. I will be interested to see though too, because now the 49ers have 2 first-round picks and a lot of buying power. They could maybe try to move up, or if one of the receiver prospects falls, they could take one of those guys too. I love the options that they have. They're going to be able to upgrade their team without really creating another weakness, and I think that's one of the coolest things about the deal. So well done, John Lynch.
Yeah, great move for sure. All right, so yeah, those are the major storylines. We could talk about some of the other moves, but I think we should just kind of paint a broader picture with free agency. So what are some of the teams that you think did best so far?
Yeah, so one team that I really like what they've done is the Oakland Raiders. They've actually signed a bunch of guys, but the 2 most notable ones, they've had massive linebacker issues for a while now. Under John Gruden, it's been a major issue, but they've really fixed it because they signed Corey Littleton, who is the best linebacker on the open market, for about $12 million a year. And then they signed Nick Kwiatkowski from the Chicago Bears, who I think is one of the more underrated players on the market at linebacker. He was my number 5 overall linebacker available. I had him rated better than Danny Trevathan, and yet he got roughly the same that Trevathan got from the Bears, despite being younger and having a better history in terms of injury. So I thought that was great for the Raiders to be able to do that. And then they've added some other guys to play depth roles. Jason Witten should be a good blocking tight end for them. Marcus Mariota has upside if Derek Carr struggles. Toss in Mariota, see what he can do. And if that fails, they can get a quarterback in 2021. So I think of the teams that have made a lot of moves, I think I like the Raiders maybe the most so far. What are your thoughts? What teams are you liking so far?
Yeah, I was actually on the radio about an hour ago, and they asked me the same question. I mentioned the Raiders as the team that improved the most. With everything you said is I completely agree with. The 2 linebackers are huge. They've had issues at linebacker forever, and now they don't anymore. So I think that was enormous. I like the Malik Collins signing as well. I don't think we saw the numbers on that yet. Maybe they came out since we started recording. But he's a young defensive tackle who's very talented, and I think he can be very good in the future. So yeah, I like that a lot. And don't forget about Jeff Heath. We led with him on the show. But no, I know, honestly, I mean, he's a good backup guy too. So I like all the moves the Raiders have made. I think they can compete, not for the division because of Mahomes, but for a wild card, and they can get into the playoffs, assuming Derek Carr isn't terrible. But then again, they have Mariota, and it wouldn't surprise me if Mariota did to Carr as Tannehill did to Mariota last year. I mean, a year ago, if you would have said that Tannehill is going to outclass Mariota and lead the Titans to the AFC Championship, you would have been people would have told you were crazy. But that's what happened, and you never know. And I think Mariota could help the Raiders get to the playoffs, or maybe Derek Carr does that too. So with this improved roster, so I love the Raiders. Two other teams I like what they've done so far. The Ravens, they haven't made like that many moves, but they traded for Calais Campbell from the Jaguars for a 5th round pick, which is just crazy to think about. And then they signed Michael Brocker. So they really improved the defensive line. Granted, they lost Marshall Yanda. It's not their fault. He retired. But I love what they did with the defensive line. So I like the Ravens. And then the Giants, I thought, made some good moves. You mentioned Blake Martinez earlier. I like that signing. They also signed James Bradbury to really help their secondary. Their secondary is awful last year, and Bradbury is going to help a lot. Now, they still need more, but that's a good start. And then they signed Kyler Fackrell today. We had a question about the Giants edge rushers earlier. Fackrell, he's like, if he has a start, it's not that bad. Ideally, he's like a 3rd edge rusher in a rotation, but considering that they got him pretty cheaply, I thought that was a good move as well. So yeah, so for me, it would be Raiders, Ravens, and Giants in some order.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the Giants. I like the Ravens as well. I like the Bills moves. We've also talked about them a fair amount so far. Another team that has made a lot of moves, and I don't know if I necessarily like all of them, but the Miami Dolphins are at least doing a lot with the cap space they have to add players. I'm not going to say all of them are good deals. I like Kyle Van Noy as much as the next guy, but giving him $13 million a year seems ridiculous. But they have now Byron Jones and Xavier Howard on the team, and they've added some other players to the defense: Manuel Ogba, Van Noy, Shaq Lawson. They added Jordan Howard on offense. They added Eric Flowers, who, by the way, you are too low on. I think Eric Flowers was better last year than you give him credit for. So just want to throw that out there. I might be wrong about this. We'll see if he finds success outside of Washington. But I thought he was a decent left guard option and should get better. So I kind of like a little bit of what the Dolphins are doing. They are overpaying a bit for some of them, though. So maybe it doesn't pan out. But I'm interested to see how they do in year 2 under Brian Flores, who I'm a big believer in.
Flowers is so bad at tackle for the Giants. And he was better at guard for the Redskins for sure. Like, he wasn't terrible. I just don't think you want him as a starter. Like, I like him a lot as a backup, but I don't know. I think we've seen a lot from him. I don't know. I just don't like it. He's not like a Robert Gallery to me who moved from tackle to guard very well. I think you can get away with him as a starter, but considering what they paid him, I think that's crazy. Like, what do you get? Like $30 million over 3 years?
Yeah, he did. And I want to just note, there have been so many $30 million for 3 years contracts, like regardless of position, that it's really weird to me. Like, I've noticed that a lot.
Yeah, it is weird. I wonder if that's something in the new CBA, because we've seen a lot of 3 for 30. We've seen a lot of, or less so, but 3 for 27. So I wonder if there's something there. I don't know. If someone's good with if someone read the new CBA somehow, you can let us know. I don't know why that's happening. All right. So yeah, so those are some of the good teams. And you mentioned the Bills briefly. Yeah, we talked about Diggs, but I also like the Addison move. They signed some other linebackers, Matakevich, Klein, like not great signings, but they're going to help the special teams out. So I like what the Bills did overall as well. So what Matthew's asking is what we're going to get to next. So what are the worst signings so far? Let's begin with the teams.
Yeah, I think the easy pick here is Houston. Houston has had a terrible free agency. They overpaid for Randall Cobb. They overpaid for Eric Murray. They traded DeAndre Hopkins for basically David Johnson, but not really, because he's basically not a running back anymore. And I can't really think of anything positive that they've done off the top of my head, which is usually a bad sign. So I think Houston has had the worst free agency by far. Okay, they re-signed Bradley Roby. Okay, let's give him credit for that. That was a solid $12 million a year. So yeah, that's about all though. Everything else that the Texans have done is horrible, and they are by far the team having the worst offseason. The other one, I will say the Patriots are probably up there solely because they're losing Tom Brady. That may not. No, I say it may not entirely be their fault, but it is in many ways their fault, because they are a good chunk to blame for why Brady was unhappy in New England last year. At least the coaching staff and ownership not getting him weapons, not really committing to him long term. My colleagues Tom Curran and Phil Perry have written about this at length. So if you want more on that, you can check them out at NBCSportsBoston.com. And we have literally everything you could want to know about Tom Brady up there.
Yeah, definitely sounds good. So yeah, I agree with those two, especially the Texans. I mean, like, we already went off on them already. Like, Bill O'Brien should not be managing a team or doing anything. Like, I even think like having him as a quality control coach would be over his head right now. Like, I think he needs to kind of step back and just go away for a while and like kind of figure out why he can't get along with anyone. And then like maybe if he has like a better outlook on life in like a couple of years, he could come back and coach. But he definitely should not be managing any team, like even like a Madden franchise team. Like, I think that would be a big mistake. All right, another bad team I thought so far is the Bears. I don't like what they've done. They signed Jimmy Graham to a horrible deal, 2 years, $16 million. This guy can't even walk. I assume when the Packers cut him, I thought Graham was going to be like, okay, I'm going to retire. But the Bears apparently thought he'd be worth $8 million a year, which is bizarre to me. And then the Robert Quinn signing, I believe they paid him 5 years, $70 million. This is a guy who struggled in the 3-4 when the Rams switched to it under Wade Phillips. And then he went to Dallas and he did well in the 4-3. And, you'd think, okay, if what Robert's thinking is like, okay, I'm going to stay in the 4-3. But when a team gives you $70 million over 5 years, I don't think you're going to turn that down. So like, I don't really blame Robert Quinn for taking the money. But I do blame the Bears for not knowing that Robert Quinn's not a good 3-4 player. And plus he's in his 30s now, so they're paying on pass production. So I just think this is just awful. And plus the Bears had a chance to sign Bridgewater, it sounded like, and they missed out on that opportunity. They've had chances to get other quarterbacks. They haven't done that yet. So I don't like anything the Bears have done so far.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think the Robert Quinn deal might be one of the worst, if not the worst, in free agency so far. Again, not because he's not talented, but he doesn't fit that scheme, and they're paying him $16 million a year $14 million a year to try and fit in there. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. Another team who's been bad, this is not a surprise because Adam Gase is in charge, is the Jets. They wanted to upgrade their offensive line. They were very much in on Joe Thuney from the Patriots, I think, before he got tagged, and then they panicked after that happened. So they gave George Fant a 3-year, $30 million deal, which made no sense because Fant is at best a good backup tackle. But now he's going to have to start at either right or left tackle. The Jets said they think he can play left tackle, which is horrifying. And then they signed Alex Lewis to like a 3-year deal worth close to $20 million. And he wasn't very good last year as a starter. They redeemed themselves by signing Connor McGovern for like, I think, a 3-year, $27 million contract. So he should be good at center at least. But the rest of their moves have been pretty uninspired. And I just want to note one other move that I kind of thought was weird. The Lions cut Rick Wagner, who, had struggled with injuries a bit in recent years and, probably needed a fresh start. But to replace him, they signed Halapavuli Vaitai to a 5-year deal worth $50 million. And I like Vaitai as much as the next guy. I learned how to pronounce his name last year. That's how much I like him. But I just don't know if he was worth that much of a commitment. Like 5 years for a guy who hasn't been a primary starter in 3 years. like, he might work out fine as a swing tackle, and $10 million a year isn't going to kill you for that position. But I felt like they probably should have gone on a shorter term deal for him. So both Fant and Vitae, I was kind of like, all right, these like deals could work out, but it feels like an overpay for a guy who might not be more than the swing tackle.
Yeah, it's bizarre to see those kinds of deals for Fant and Vitae, and then you have the Chargers signing Brian Bulaga for 3 years, $30 million, and it's like what I just wonder like what these teams are thinking sometimes. Like we've seen Vitae and Fant. They've made some starts in their career, and they've looked okay sometimes. They've looked bad sometimes too. Yeah, especially the 5 years, the 5 year deal is just crazy. I don't understand that. Especially with like, if you think about it, Matt Patricia is kind of like on the hot seat. And if he doesn't get to the playoffs this year or close, I have to believe he's going to be fired. Unless like they suffer a lot of injuries. So like, why sign him to a 5 year deal? That just doesn't make much sense to me. I guess he was just desperate, but like, were other teams considering signing Vitae for a little bit less? I just don't see it. So then again, the Jets did sign George Fant 3 years, $30 million. So I like, it's amazing to me. Every offseason, you see the smart teams making the good moves and the dumb teams making the bad moves, and it's the same teams every time. And we always wonder, it's like, hey, how'd the Ravens get a 5th round pick for Calais Campbell, and why'd the Texans surrender, why'd the Texans get nothing for DeAndre Hopkins? And this happens every year. I mean, last year we were talking about the bad trades the Texans were making and the good moves the Ravens were making, and it's like Groundhog Day. It's the same thing all over again.
Yeah, it really is. And like, I get why Fant and Vitae's value is increased a little on the open market, because the league lacks high quality offensive line play, or at least enough to go around. So it drives the value up for athletic young players. But still, it still doesn't make sense that they'd get as much as they did. But especially when Bulaga goes to the Chargers on like a very reasonable deal. Like, he's making the same amount per year as Fant, Vitae, and Flowers. And I think if you ask any football fan who knows the offensive line well enough, they would say Bulaga is probably the best player of those, hands down.
Oh yeah, definitely. So go back to Matthew's question. So what's the worst signing so far? You mentioned Quinn possibly. Is that your worst? Is that your vote for the worst signing, or is it Vitae?
I think I'm going to go with Quinn, because I at least think Vitae has upside, and I like Vitae's skill set enough. But Quinn, like, he's 30, like you said, past production, scheme that doesn't fit him. The only thing that could possibly benefit him is playing across from Khalil Mack. Other than that, I don't see him finding success. So I'm going to go Quinn, final answer here. Okay.
Yeah. I could definitely go for Quinn. I think I gave that a D, and I gave two of the signings F grades, which is now O'Brien grades. One was Eric Murray by O'Brien, fittingly. 3 years, $20 million for a guy I had ranked as my 34th safety in free agency. I don't understand what they were thinking. I really don't. And then the Jimmy Graham signing with the 2 years, $16 million. Like, granted, that's not going to kill the Bears, but this just seems like they lit $16 million on fire. Like, there's really no reason to give Graham anything more than the veteran minimum right now. Like I said, I thought he'd retire because he can't even move anymore. So as Kenny would say, Walt, your sister would do a better job than Jimmy Graham, and I think she actually would, because Graham can't move and she can. Even though she's pregnant. So those are my thoughts. Those are the worst signings, and we talked about the best ones. So I guess that's about it. Any parting thoughts?
None too far. Just one tiny one for the Redskins. I predicted that they would sign Thomas Davis after he got cut by the Chargers. That did happen. I'm kind of happy to see that, because he works well with Ron Rivera, and they needed some good leadership. So parting thoughts, glad to see Thomas Davis in Washington.
Yeah. Bagley pointing out, I believe you gave Flowers an O'Brien grade as well. You might be right about that. I can check very quickly.
I actually know for a fact that you did, because I was kind of upset by it, but
really? Okay.
I wasn't upset to the point that I was like angry, because I had him pegged as like a $6 to $8 million a year. So it was definitely an overpay, but I was like, this should be a D, not an O'Brien. That's like me nitpicking to the extreme.
Yeah, you know what? It's like it's weird because if I had to regrade that now, um, I don't think I'd give it an F anymore because of some of the awful trades, awful signings we've seen since. Like the George Fan signing, I think is probably worse. Like although, I mean, I think he has more upside because he can play tackle, so I can at least like understand. I can understand sort of, but yeah, if I had to regrade it now, it'd probably be a D. So yeah, so I hopefully you're not too upset anymore.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I obviously you kind of have to grade on a curve because the first free agent signings we may overreact to, then we see the actual market. So that's kind of how things go after a certain point.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Steven's saying that the Bears need the tallest receivers to catch Trubisky's overthrown balls, but hopefully Trubisky's not starting for them because the Bears would just be horrible. All right, so yeah, that's it. You could stay tuned on walterfootball.com to check out updated free agent signings. I imagine some signings happen as during the hour in which we're talking. So yeah, stay tuned tonight and tomorrow for more signings. So anything you want to plug?
Yeah, we've been tracking free agency on NBCSportsBoston.com too. Tons of Brady content there. If you want to read any of that, head over there. Also, my Redskins site, RigosRag.com. We're tracking Redskins free agency. Got some grades on those guys. Their Kendall Fuller signing of $10 million a year was pretty nice. I graded that over there, so feel free to check it out. And follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I'll be tweeting my thoughts about free agency. Feel free to interact with me, ask questions. Always down to talk.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm at walterfootball.com as mentioned. And hit subscribe if you're watching YouTube, that helps a lot. Or send this site/video to someone else if you want to help out the channel and the website. So all right, I will talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right, bye.